Soundscape. It is 6:42 a.m. in late June. Through open windows I am bathing in the sounds of birds I do not know, trills and whistles, warbles and clicks, calls and responses, short and long. Some soon recognized and repeats, others not so easily distinguished again, all modulated, syncopated, melodiously and chaotically spilling into the air, filling the world with song under song, over song, within song, after song. It goes on in a clamor, moment by moment, ever new, ever exuberant, a cornucopia of sound spilling out everywhere. There is also the not too distant and unmistakably growing hum of traffic on a not insignificant artery flowing intently deep into the body of the metropolis toward the heart of the city from the northwestern periphery, and pouring out in the other direction under similar pressure. The occasional roar of a semi accelerating is discernible, but for the most part the impatient tire whirs and insistent engine purrs merge into one sound stream announcing that the world of human purpose and industry is waking up from its slumbers along with the birds. Delicious soundscapes punctuated at times by the fluttering of leaves on the gigantic Norway maple behind me, so close to the house, and by sighing from the boughs of the hemlocks in front of me, caressed by intermittent gusts of gentle wind, all coupled with, just now, the conventional voices of dog walkers passing by in the unpaved street under those hemlocks. Now a siren sound is contributed, distinct, brief, not repeated, and now and again a bang from something heavy being dropped off a truck on the farm below the hill. There are also beeps from something big backing up somewhere. This soundscape is always present. It is always the same and always different as the minutes and the hours flit by. And always in each moment there are the birds' songs and occasional screeches. I cease thinking any thoughts about sources and give myself over to hearing. It is very much a bathing in sound, a sensuous luxuriating in pure sound and the spaces between them, in layer upon layer of sounds. Now they are simply what they are, no longer identified, no longer listened for in a straining, reaching sort of way. I simply sit here, moment by moment, receiving whatever's arising in the soundscape, not even inviting it to come to my ears, since it is always coming anyway, if mostly not really heard or known because the mind is elsewhere, preoccupied with something, anything at all, which can always include thinking about the origins of the sounds I'm hearing, or preferring some to others, having opinions instead of just hearing. In this giving myself over to the hearing, pure and simple, in these moments there is only the hearing. The soundscape is everywhere. It is no longer in the world. It is the world. Or more accurately, there is no world anymore, and no me listening, and no sounds out there. There are no birds, no trucks, no airplanes and sirens and ladders being put up. There is only sound in the spaces between sounds. There is only the hearing in this all of a sudden timeless moment of now, even as it flows into the next timeless moment of now. And in the hearing there is also the immediate knowing of sound as it is heard in its arising, in its brief or sustained lingering, and in its passing away. Not the knowing that comes with thinking, but a deeper knowing, a more intuitive knowing, a knowing that is somehow before the words and the concepts that clothe our knowings, something underneath thinking, more fundamental, the co-arising with sound of the knowing of sound as sound, is just what it is before it gets dressed up by the thinking mind and evaluated by our naming, by our liking and disliking of things, by our judging mind. It is something like a mirror for sound, this knowing, simply reflecting what comes before it, without opinion or attitude, open, empty, and therefore capable of containing anything that presents itself. In this moment, the immersion is so complete that there is no longer any immersion. Sound is everywhere. The knowing is everywhere, within the envelope of the body and without, for there is no longer a boundary of any sort. There is only sound, only hearing, only silent knowing within an infinite soundscape. Only this, only just this. That's not to say that thoughts do not arise. They do. It's rather to say that their presence no longer colors the hearing or interferes with it. It's almost as if the thoughts themselves have become sounds and are heard and known along with everything else in their arising and in their passing. They no longer distract or disturb, for in being known, they tend to melt away, no longer proliferating endlessly. The knowing is sky-like, air-like. Like space, it is everywhere, boundless. It's nothing other than awareness itself, pure, utterly simple. It's also utterly mysterious, for it's not something that I am creating, but rather a quality not separate from being alive, that sometimes emerges like a shy animal come to sun itself on a log in a forest clearing. It lingers if I am quiet and don't make sudden movements within the space of the mind. The clock before me now shows 8:33. In these hours, an infinite number of moments have gone by, and yet no time has passed. I feel anointed, blessed by this bathing, by this immersion in the soundscape that knows no beginning and no ending, by this miracle that is hearing, that is wakefulness, that is knowing. I wonder if there is any moment in which just this, is not available to me. What does it take to hear what is always already here, to be heard, punctuated and void as it always is by an even greater underlying silence? I do notice later on that if I'm not careful, meaning grounded in awareness, as the day unfolds, within no time I might be hearing nothing for hours on end other than the roaring noise of the thought stream in my own head, no matter what is presenting itself to the ears. Meditating with a group of environmental activists on a rocky beach on Windfall Island at the mouth of Tebenkoff Bay in the Tongass Wilderness in southeast Alaska, just off Chatham Strait and across from the snow-capped peaks of Baranof Island, none of us can but take note of how the humpbacked whales contribute hugely to the ambient soundscape of this pristine wilderness air as they come and go with the tides day and night between the bay and the strait. We hear the whoosh of their out-breath, long, deep, sonorous, and so basic, so ancient. It is as if we are immersed in breath sounds that have been going on uninterrupted for millions of years in the same place, which of course they have. If we are sensitive enough, we occasionally hear the in-breaths as well, just before they dip back under. With eyes open, we can see as well as hear their out-breaths, even from quite a distance, as the white vapor geyser bursts forth high into the air with every surfacing. We feel they somehow know we are here on the beach, sitting, our eyes closed for the most part. For a time, we are immersed in a world that is probably little different from the way it was 5,000 or 15,000 years ago, or more. A vast and primordial silence, ebbing with sounds. Bald eagles cry out, ravens squawk, smaller birds on the water and in the air all contribute their various calls and cries. The waves lap at the shore. The winds blow through old-growth Sitka spruce and western hemlock temperate rainforest that has known the force of the brutal winters, but never the clear-cut saw. We sit here opening to this world, to this soundscape, to its ancient memories. Or are they certainties? Our dog knows that the soundscape includes what is not heard every bit as much as what is. If she hears the screen door open and close, but does not hear it slammed shut and click, she knows she can escape the house. She just knows. This is merely an example of how not hearing in the soundscape is full of significant information if we are tuned in enough to detect the absence of sounds and changes in patterns of sound and silence. Music may tickle our auditory nerves, as Taj Mahal used to sing it, but the soundscape isn't just sound. It is the entire universe of sounds and silences, shared by our hearing when we are willing to give ourselves over entirely to just being, nothing more, just being with hearing. There is a sound like a garbage truck outside as I sit here. It's not garbage day. Perhaps it's a street sweeper, says my mind, seeking some way to identify it. But it is not going away. Maybe they're drilling. It sounds like a truck going up a steep incline forever, not getting nearer or farther away. Perhaps they're doing some work up the street. I can sit here and think endless thoughts about it. Where it's coming from, how much I wish it weren't here, why it's happening so early in the morning. Maybe I should get up and investigate, see where it's coming from. What is making that noise? To what end? Right now, I'm sitting here. I can choose to be disturbed or not. But that choice seems difficult and remote, an exercise of willpower, a way of resisting what is already so, already here, this sound. I watch the disturbance and non-disturbance oscillate back and forth. Behind this play of my mind is pure sound. Hearing the sound and not knowing what it is are both knowing. In this moment, can I simply rest in that knowing, the knowing that doesn't know and doesn't need to know, and is content because these sounds are already here in this moment. Things are already just like this right now. Can they be accepted as they are because anything else is going to lead to disliking, to frustration, to disturbance, to greater distraction? The mind secretes a thought. Perhaps I could accept it better if I knew what it was, who was making it, how long it was likely to go on. Awareness also knows that thought is a thought as it is emerging. It sees the thinking mind groping, grasping, desperate now for some kind of explanation, for reassurance, for a coordinate system within which acceptance might reside, having managed to turn what were just sounds into noise, a magical if unnecessary alchemy. Awareness also sees these thoughts, the annoyance, the struggling, and the grasping, as extra, as equally unnecessary. They are impediments to tranquility. Impediments, ironically, far greater than the sound itself. There is tranquility in the hearing and in the knowing underneath the sound. I let go into it. The sound stops momentarily, then resumes. No hindrance arises. All of a sudden, the mind experiences a spasm of discomfort. It insists on finding out. Somehow, awareness and my larger purpose evaporate. The spasm of desiring to identify the source gets the body up to look out the window. A big truck is going by. It is a noise, but it's not the noise. What has getting up and looking for done for me? Nothing. I resume sitting and settle into hearing. The urge to find out grows enormous the longer the sound goes on. I continue sitting and disappear into it. After a while, the sound moves off into the distance and bird songs reemerge. Thinking comes up with something else, even now that things are more quiet. That is seen. A smile spreads across my face. Breath moving in and out. Sitting here, just sitting here, sitting. A spaciousness no longer tainted by thoughts of sounds or of silence. Awareness. There are no longer any interruptions. The mind no longer interrupts itself. For now, there is only just this. Just this. The sound comes back. The smile widens, lingers, dissolves. Airscape. Imagine yourself underwater, still fully able to breathe. Now try moving. Move just one arm and hand, slowly at first. Can you feel how the water streams around the arm, between the fingers, across the back of the hand, and all around? As I do it now, I feel a fluidity in the movement itself, as if my arm and hand suddenly have a new life to them. They seem drawn to go on their own wherever they can, to flow and undulate anywhere and everywhere, to experiment spontaneously with greater freedom of motion. These slow, inherently elegant movements seem to become more fluid merely by imagining and thereby sensing that they are in a fluid. If you are doing it now, can you feel how graceful your moving has already become, and how effortless? Linger in this feeling as long as you like while continuing to move. And if you like, gradually let the rest of your body join in. Let yourself become a strand of kelp waving rhythmically in a bed of waving kelp in the ocean near where sea meets land. You might try standing up if you are sitting and let your whole body, arms, legs, torso, and head move however it likes, feeling the flowing currents around the body as it is drawn into responding in whatever ways it chooses to the fluid within which it is immersed. Actually, we do live at the bottom of an ocean of air. Letting go of the water image, you might play with seeing if you can actually feel this ocean of air with your skin as you move your arms and your hands as slowly as before. Feeling the streaming of the air through and around your fingers and hands, bathing in the sensations you're experiencing, whatever they are. As you settle more and more into your body and bring more and more awareness to the body as a whole, allowing it to move on its own, in its own way, perhaps noticing how the felt sense of the body moving can turn amazingly, instantly, into the essence of Tai Chi, flowing movement within stillness, within an ocean of awareness, an ocean of air. Now allow yourself to come to stillness and sense the air with your whole body. Rather than searching for a particular feeling, let it emerge on its own, as if you were listening with your skin for the air to speak. You do not have to reach out or try to do or feel anything. After all, the air is already all around you and inside you, touching you. Without trying, sensing how you are already embedded in this fluid, how the ocean of air caresses your skin, envelops you, embraces you, even when it's hardly moving in a room, even when it's utterly still. Feel how you are mysteriously drawn to draw it into your body over and over again through your nose or mouth. How this happens without your trying, without any forcing, without volition even. Feel how it is received by the baskets that are your lungs, and reflect for a moment on how the oxygen molecules, unimaginably tiny, are magically snared out of the air that has diffused from the alveoli in your lungs into the bloodstream by the correspondingly enormous, but still unimaginably tiny, hemoglobin molecules packed into now, in the binding with oxygen, bright red blood cells that do only the job of transporting that air essence with every contraction of the left ventricle of your heart to all the trillions of cells that make up the infinitely complex universe of your body, all of which would soon die without this essential sustenance. Such a reflection might give occasion to pause for a moment, allowing you to metaphorically catch your breath and consciously situate yourself in the airscape. Myself, I'm currently having an on-again, off-again love affair with the air. When I remember, the love affair is on. When I forget, it's off again, until the air itself reminds me and embodies me. Not that it is hard to love the air. In summer, light morning breezes flow over bare shoulders as I sit in stillness, breathing with eyes closed or open. I feel the air around the body with my skin, and lo, the skin is enlivened. I bathe in the sometime gusts and subtler currents in the room, drink in the humidity and the freshness, and I am of a sudden more awake. The dankness of a sometimes heavy evening speaks in its own tongue to skin and nose, every bit as much as do the excitations of a sea breeze square on my face, the balm of a midwinter thaw, and the bite of a January wind that freezes skin everywhere it's exposed. It wasn't always so. For most of my life, the air was just the air, not really noticed at all and appreciated even less. Slowly, the realization has crept up on me that it is indeed just air. But what a gift. What a sensuous gift, this invitation to feel what is already offered to us, to experience that we are being perpetually embraced and nourished at all times, both touched by and touching the spirit of Ariel, the very air itself. We are breathing and being breathed. We are living in air, like Chagall figures, and living on it and off it too. When I relate to the air with a degree of affection, intimacy, and constancy, that is, with increasing mindfulness, it's hard not to notice that the airscape is continually in flux. One moment it is moving, the next moment it is still. It beckons me, awakens me, keeps me on my toes when I feel it in this way. Now it is warm. I look and feel again, and it's cool. Its various personas are met in different hours, in its different seasons. The sweet back-to-school coolness full of memories, the bracing chill of winter, more memories, and the occasional warm day with a feeling all its own for not being summer but pretending, while snow and ice are all around, melting and giving the air its own unique signature of feels and smells. The air, the air, the air. Once you begin paying attention to it, loving the air, you can easily understand why it was elevated and revered as a primordial element in ancient civilizations. The air. As I look out at the stand of hemlocks, they are swaying, playing at their Tai Chi. I feel the same air that is moving them, moving now across my back and shoulders and neck. In this, we are united, touched by the very same wave, each moving in our own way, and also, amazingly, joined in an exchange that is larger than us both, in which all life, plant and animal, is participating in every moment around the entire planet, a giving and receiving between these large living kingdoms on a cosmic scale, a recycling and revitalizing of the air that also recycles and revitalizes us. And this dynamic exchange, wonder of wonders, maintains this thin and strangely vulnerable invisible blanket of atmosphere that wraps and hugs our round home within the unthinkable vastness of the vacuum we call space, a vacuum of almost emptiness, almost nothing. And that, from our point of view as living creatures, is everything, because without the invisible air, we are soon nothing again ourselves. Hast thou, which are but air, a touch, a feeling of their afflictions? William Shakespeare, The Tempest. Touchscape. It's not just the air that touches us, although its touch is constant. Our body touches every chair it sits on, every piece of floor or ground it stands on, every surface it lies on, every piece of clothing in contact with the skin, every tool our hands wield, everything we attempt to grasp, lift, propel, receive, or deliver. And perhaps most importantly, we touch each other in myriad ways, sometimes automatic, sometimes perfunctory, sometimes sensuous, sometimes romantic, sometimes loving, sometimes aggressive, sometimes unfeeling, sometimes with anger. Depending on how we are touched, we can feel loved, accepted, and valued, or ignored, disrespected, assaulted. We touch through handshakes, a hand on another's shoulder, an arm around another, through pats, hugs, lifts, embraces, kisses, caresses, dances, massages, and usually in games where such touch is regulated by different sets of rules than our normal social code, through colliding, tackling, checking, grappling, even kicking and punching. And there are times when, not in games, we might be either touched or touching another in ways that are unkind, even menacing or worse. Of course, increasingly there are laws regulating that kind of touch in society for the protection of our basic rights of safety and bodily sovereignty as individuals. But however we touch and whatever we touch, inanimate or animate, plant, animal, or human being, stranger, client, colleague, friend, child, parent, lover, we can touch either mindfully or mindlessly. And in any and every moment, we have a chance to know directly through awareness how we ourselves are being touched and how we are feeling and what we are sensing from moment to moment as a consequence of both how we are touching and how we are being touched. This is the landscape of touch, the touchscape, if you will, the sensory field of ever-reciprocal direct somatic contact between ourselves and the world, which we can feel, whether superficial or deep, across any and every square inch of our bodies. As I sit here cross-legged in this moment, writing at my desk on the floor, I am aware of the sensations coming from my butt in contact with my meditation cushion, or zafu, and from the outside lengths of my lower legs, stretching from the knees to ankles and upturned feet, draped one in front of the other, resting on the fabric-enclosed cotton batting or zabuton that cushions them from the floor. I am also aware of the touch sensations coming from the upper surfaces of my feet, which are also in contact with this padding. These are the only parts of my body at present in contact with what is beneath me, holding me up, even as gravity is continually pulling every part of the body towards the floor, completely balanced by the repose of the posture itself. The dominant sensation at the moment is one of heaviness in the lower part of the buttocks, extending just a bit into the upper thighs and back, where they are absorbing the pressure of the upper body pushing down into the well-stuffed zafu. The pelvis is tilted forward, and the lumbar spine, as a consequence, curves in lordosis towards the abdomen, so that the greatest pressure is on the bones lying beneath the gluteus maximi. There is a sense of contraction in the left knee more than the right, as the left leg, foot, and heel are closer to the perineum than the right leg, which lies beyond the left one in contact with the zabuton below it. The feeling of contraction gives a sense of the knee being somewhat congested in this moment. There are sensations of tingling and pulsing, almost throbbing, much more in this knee than in the other one. There is also the softness of the padding against the outer edges of the lower legs and the tops of the feet. I notice that some of the sensations in the legs and buttocks are from the contact with what my lower body is sitting on in this posture, but others, like the sensations in the knee, extend beyond this physical contact and include sensations that are simply associated with the body's awareness of itself and where all the various regions of the body are in relationship to each other and in relationship to the space it is occupying. This is part of the sensory experience of proprioception, from the Latin proprius, meaning one's own. The rest of my body is touching only the air surrounding it, except for the contact of the heels of my hands with the laptop's handrest and the palm side ends of my fingers pressing into the keys as I type at this close to the floor table that serves as a desk when sitting in this fashion. Sensations in the heels of the hands include warmth, the laptop's giving off heat, smoothness and hardness of the surface they're lying on, and their own intrinsic heaviness. The heels of the hands supporting the weight of the arms feel anchored and weighty. The fingers, flexed in the customary position on the keyboard, feel light, energetic, and pulsing. Of course, touch is not segregated from the other senses, so I'm also aware in this moment of the soundscape bathing me by way of the air that bathes my skin and enters my lungs with every contraction of my diaphragm as I sit here. And I'm touched by it, but in a different way than the direct somatosensory contact of the touchscape. It feels somewhat less tangible, more disembodied, until I realize that it is my whole body that is absorbing the sounds and not just my ears. That as I pay careful attention, the physical vibrations of the sounds are being felt in some cases right down to my bones. I am also simultaneously aware of what is continually presenting itself to the eyes, what we could call the sightscape, the screen upon which these words are appearing. 30 years ago, in the era of electric typewriters, such an experience would truly have been considered science fiction. And beyond the screen, the room and the early morning sunlight through the windows to my right, illuminating just a few vertical surfaces, the back of the desk chair, a bit of the desk, a red loose leaf book stuffed vertically next to the printer, the sun's own calligraphy, reflected shadows of a few leaves from the giant Norway maple outside, magically appearing on the vertical support for the shelving above the printer. I look again after a few minutes have passed, and it is all different. The light on the desk is gone. The shadow calligraphy is cast from a slightly different angle. The leaves and the stems are now more defined and flatter. Ashley Montague, in his classic book, Touch, The Human Significance of the Skin, observed that the word touch has the distinction of the longest entry in the Oxford English Dictionary. That means that it is longer even than the entry for the word love. And if we stop and think about it, it may not strike us as all that surprising. For where would love be without touch? Touch is so basic to life. In high school biology class, when we looked at, poked, and probed cells and small animals under a microscope, this property was coldly and clinically referred to as irritability. We are embedded in the world and know it through all the senses. But the most basic one, the least specialized, the most global, has got to be touch, which transpires across the membrane of skin that contains us, defines our body, and differentiates its interior milieu from the outer, the world beyond its bounds. Before we were born, we all grew into our body and our being within the living environment of another being and her body, bounded within other membranes where we were held apart and yet somehow not apart as well, not quite two, not even separate bodies, containment and touch at their most basic. We know all this, yet somehow often forget or downplay the utter miracle and lived mystery of it. We have all participated in it from one side, and mothers from both sides. We are nurtured through touch, nurturing touch, loving containment, holding before we're born and after. While latched on and nursing, babies usually feel around for the other nipple and hold on to it, touching and in touch with one through the lips and the tongue, with the other through tiny, perfect fingers, completing circuits of love and continual nurturing, nourishing connection, a sustenance well beyond the milk itself. When carried, babies are continually held and therefore touched, in contact with the larger bodies of their parents and caretakers. And when they sleep with their parents in their bed, the physical contact continues while sleeping, wrapped in the same warm and loving cocoon. Metaphorically speaking, we can be out of touch, lose touch, be touched as in the head, and feel touched as when our hearts are moved. We can not touch our food, put the touch on someone for money, feel a touch of envy or sadness, add a touch of paprika, have a touch of the flu, let the candlelight provide just the right touch, be told not to touch anything, touch off an uproar, touch upon something in conversation, touch up the scratches on our car, add finishing touches to the flower arrangements, and touch base with someone. The sense of touch is actually, from a neurological point of view, a number of different senses all subsumed under the same word. Sensing the pressure of contact is one, sensing the temperature of contact is another. Sensing contact that is so intense it causes us pain is yet another, as is sensing a caress so loving it gives us pleasure. Another dimension of the sense of touch involves our ability to sense the body inwardly, to know, for instance, where your hands are without moving them or looking at them, or what the carriage of the body is in any moment. As we've already noted, this sensory capacity we all have is called proprioception, the sense of knowing where the body is spatially, orienting within the field of the body and sensing its movements and intentions. Proprioception is so basic that we almost never accorded any status and awareness. It is taken completely for granted. But loss of proprioception through sensory nerve damage is utterly catastrophic. One no longer knows or feels that one is, so to speak, a resident of the body, inhabiting a willing universe of potential intentional activity within the larger world. One's hands and legs are no longer one's own. They are foreign objects with no value or utility. They cannot be moved in anything like the usual way. One's connection with them and with the whole of the body is severed. It's the ultimate being out of touch. Happily, this condition is extremely rare. But being unaware of proprioception and being instrumentally out of touch with our own body is, sadly, extremely common. Luckily, in this case, there is an enormous amount we can do to recover this miraculous dimension of lived experience instantly, for it is never far away, always closer than close. We are only out of touch because we ignore what is already here. If we drop the ignoring, we come instantly to our senses, because the senses are already and always delivering. That is their nature. We only need to awaken to them. After rain, after many days without rain, it stays cool, private and cleansed under the trees. And the dampness there, married now to gravity, falls branch to branch, leaf to leaf, down to the ground, where it will disappear, but not, of course, vanish, except to our eyes. The roots of the oaks will have their share, and the white threads of the grasses, and the cushion of moss. A few drops, round as pearls, will enter the mole's tunnel, and soon so many small stones buried for 1,000 years will feel themselves being touched. Mary Oliver, Lingering in Happiness. In touch with your skin. The skin is our biggest sensory organ. Someone once calculated that in an adult it measures approximately 20 square feet of surface area if laid out flat, and weighs about 9 pounds. We tend to label the skin as the organ of touch, even though, as we've just seen, we are touched by the world through all our other, in some ways more specialized sense organs as well. But what the word touch most evokes for us is intimately tied to our skin. This is also true when we use the word feel in certain ways, for it is by way of the skin that what we think of as physical contact is made and felt, and it is here where the simultaneous bidirectional reciprocity of our contact with the world is most apparent. For we cannot touch something without being touched by it in the very same instant. We cannot be touched without touching. Walking barefoot, our feet kiss the earth with every step, and the earth kisses right back, and we feel it. Of course, if we are out of touch, we won't feel it even though the contact is undeniable. And as we know, the best way to be out of touch is for our mind to be distracted or preoccupied, caught up in ruminations, in the stream of thoughts and emotions, in our own self-involvements, as is so often the case, and therefore unavailable for direct experience in any moment. In this digital age, we are at risk for being permanently and perpetually distracted and self-distracting, requiring more presence of mind than ever before to stay in touch with what is most important, hence the increasing importance of mindfulness. We also know that the skin is intimately tied to our emotions. If we let them, things can get under our skin. We blush with embarrassment, are flushed with pride, turn white with fear, pale with grief, green with envy. For all these reasons and many more, the skin is a magnificent object of meditative attention. Bringing awareness to our skin, we readily sense the air around the body, perhaps for the first time consciously. At first, it may be easier to feel the air touching the skin and our skin touching the air when there's a breeze blowing. But with cultivation, you can sense the air around the body at any time, even when the air is not moving, just by bringing awareness to the envelope of the body. The skin doesn't actually breathe. Still, it can be useful to sense or imagine it breathing across this membrane between our flesh and the rest of the biosphere by intentionally placing our mind on and in our skin. Our awareness can envelop the skin like a glove envelops our hand. Awareness soaks right into the skin like water into a sponge. When we are mindful of the sensations in the skin, it can feel like our mind is inhabiting our skin. Mind and skin are not separate, except when the mind goes to sleep. You could even say with some accuracy that the skin is an aspect of the mind. This is not as far-fetched as it may sound. As we shall see, there are a number of different maps of the body and the brain, one set of which is known as the somatosensory homunculus. The regions of the somatosensory homunculus correspond to the surface features of the skin. But in the homunculus, the hands and the feet and the lips and the tongue are huge compared to other locations on the skin. This is because of the high concentration of sensory nerve endings in these particular regions, refined sensing elements embedded throughout the thin membrane that is our skin and the tissue below it. So when you put your mind intentionally in your hands or feet or in your lips, you will feel a vivid panoply of sensation coursing through the skin in these locations. The skin is a sensory world unto itself. It's never devoid of sensation, even when it doesn't seem to be touching anything, for it is always touching something by virtue of being an interface. It has its own sensory tone at all times. It is always in touch. The question is, Can we be in touch with our own skin? You may also feel greater sensation in your hands and feet and lips because of the high innervation of motor neurons in these regions, especially in your hands. The sensory and motor functions go, dare I say it, hand in hand. Sensing your hands from the inside and right out through the skin, you will feel a beauty of form and function that is in no way secondary to any hands carved in marble by Michelangelo. We honor the artistry and the aesthetic that brings stone to life, in part because it reconnects us to our own intrinsic beauty, a beauty that transcends age and everything that has happened to us that may be writ large on and in the body in some way. It touches us. It reminds us that these are our miraculous hands that we so much don't know, that we so much take for granted, so much use mechanically, that we can ironically be so insensate to. When we perceive so palpably the life in the marble, we are brought back to life ourselves, resuscitated metaphorically and literally. It is another benefit of this unavoidable reciprocity embedded in sensing, in this case taking place at the interface where trafficking occurs between inner and outer worlds across the sturdy yet delicate surfaces of skin and fingers, our thumbs, our palms, the miracle of hands. You are more beautiful than anyone, and yet your body had a flaw. Your small hands were not beautiful, and I am afraid that you will run and paddle to the wrist in that mysterious, always brimming lake where those that have obeyed the holy law paddle and are perfect. Leave unchanged the hands that I have kissed, for old sake's sake. William Butler Yeats, Broken Dreams.